You all have failed.
No,
you all continue to fail. We've done nothing. You've had the gavel, Mr. Comer. We barely do hearings on anything that actually affects change.
You want to
have
spend more
power
money,
here,
more money,
and
more
yet
money.
you don't do anything. Yes, he actually initiated this, sir, but thank you so much for your opinion.
You have failed.
I yield it back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
I think like so many people on this committee have already articulated, nobody here believes that rooting out fraud and waste and abuse is not a top priority of this committee, of our caucus, of their conference. It is. If you're on this committee, it is the top charge that we all undertake incredibly seriously. But I think, like so many things with the modern Republican Party, it's like you're skulking right around the edge of things, but too often, your bigotry, the Republican Party's own bigotry, is imprisoning them and keeping them from ever actually doing something that helps, not harms, the American people. And this is another one of those instances.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here, and everybody's screaming about fraud right now. The focus has been on Minnesota daycares, viral videos demonizing Somali businesses, and punk-ass frat boy YouTube types running around making inflammatory accusations for clicks.
Can you tell us why there are no children? Have you ever seen children at this child care center?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Doesn't know if she's ever seen a child here.
But let's slow this down for just a second and be very clear from the get-go, because the word fraud they keep throwing around, it's not just about paperwork or line items. Fraud is branding sabotage as reform. Fraud is lying to the public while pretending you're the watchdog. Fraud is tearing down the systems that keep people alive, safe, and working. And then pointing your finger at Joe Biden or Tim Walz or Hillary Clinton's emails or Barack Obama while you're pretending to be walking with the Lord. And you know what? These Republicans who are always belly aching about fraud and abuse, well, when the tables are turned, they cannot escape the clapback, even in their own hearings. And as Congressman Stephen Lynch put it this week, and he didn't pull any punches, if we're really looking for fraud, we don't need to go far. And he gave the address, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. No shocker there, folks.
I just want to say from this committee, this investigative committee, if we're really looking for fraud, if we're truly looking for fraud, in addition to all the cases that Mr. Ballou listed, we don't need to go far. I can even suggest the address, 1600 Pennsylvania Ave. If we're looking for fraud in this country, that's a great place to start. President Trump put his name on the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. For those of you who are too young to remember, JFK was a war hero from my state. He was an Irish Catholic, first Catholic elected president. Fought a lot of bigotry during his time trying to become president. He actually stood up to the Russians. But he was a war hero, a decorated war hero. He's the only United States president who ever have received the Purple Heart. He also received the Medal of Valor from the Navy and the Marine Corps, because during World War II, he was commanding a PT boat, PT-109. His vessel was struck by a destroyer in the South Pacific. And he actually risked his life to save his crew members. And after he was assassinated, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, his successor, and the United States Congress at that time recognized his service and sacrifice to this country by naming the Performing Arts Center after him. He had raised most of the money to build that center, he and Jacqueline Kennedy. And it is shameful. It is a case of stolen valor for this president to put his name above the name of John F. Kennedy. That is a fraud being perpetrated on this country right now.
And that wasn't the end of it. That moment didn't stand alone. Once that door cracked open, the whole thing spilled out. It was like opening Pandora's box. What followed wasn't one isolated beatdown. It was the theme of the day. The rest of that hearing turned into Democrats exposing the same old Republican playbook over and over again. Lies, hypocrisy, and bad faith.
This hearing seems to be a hypocritical witch hunt. It's hard to to take it as anything but that, rather than an actual oversight effort. Our federal government currently has the tools to catch and prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. It's how the alleged fraud in Minnesota was caught by the Biden administration in the first place. Again and again, Trump has attacked the oversight mechanisms within the federal government. He illegally fired 17 inspectors general and other key personnel. He goes after whistleblowers and he tries to roll back their protections. He routinely ignores the rampant corruption within his own administration. Republicans have turned a blind eye to all of this. They have held no hearings on these actions. And this hearing today isn't even about fraud generally within the federal benefits system, which we would welcome. Republicans have cherry-picked a blue state and an immigrant population, vulnerable, to demonize. To be clear, Minnesota is not the only state with a fraud problem. To truly tackle waste, fraud, and abuse, we need to approach the issue with a scalpel, not a mallet.
Republicans getting called out right there on the record for pretending to care about fraud while protecting tax cuts for billionaires, shielding donors, and covering for pedophiles. And once that started, they had no control over it anymore. It was like trying to shove toothpaste back into the tube. And that's when this stopped being noise and turned into a takedown, because it wasn't just one lawmaker landing a shot. It was a 1-2 punch that exposed the entire scam.
Now, let's actually talk about real fraud and some fraudsters. Now, we all know that recently, here in Florida, President Trump granted a get-out-of-jail-free pardon to Philip S. Forms. Now, Mr. S. Forms is a nursing home mogul convicted of schemes to defraud Medicare and Medicaid of $1.3 billion. Where is that hearing? This guy just didn't steal from taxpayers. He took advantage of thousands of people, admitting them to nursing homes and living facilities that could not help them. His network of doctors gave out dangerous and harmful treatments and prescribing opioids to drug addicts just to make more money.
And once the whole thing went off the rails, the so-called fraud narrative they'd been trying to sell didn't just weaken. No, it collapsed completely. And that's when the Democrats finally stopped reacting and started prosecuting the case Republicans don't want answered. When alleged wrongdoing involves people of color, Republicans are quick to call it a pattern. They indict entire communities, turn a handful of accusations into a political weapon, and use it to stoke fear and outrage. But when that same kind of wrongdoing involves Republicans or people inside their circle of power, suddenly it's no big deal. It's minimized, swept under the rug, dismissed altogether. And once that double standard was out in the open, Robert Garcia brought the receipts the GOP couldn't run from.
Now let's look at Paul Walczak, a tax cheat whose crimes cost taxpayers almost $1.1 billion, dwarfing what we're talking about today, as he made lavish purchases like a $1 million luxury yacht. Now, Mr. Walczak was supposed to spend 18 months in prison, a fraudster who we want to go after. He should have been held accountable for his crimes. And he was supposed to pay $4.4 million back to the taxpayers. While this pardon application was pending, his mom was invited to a $1 million per person candlelight dinner at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. She attended, and less than 3 weeks later, her son received a full and unconditional pardon. These are pardons to criminals and fraudsters that our witnesses clearly have no interest in. Now, in Trump's America, rich people can rip innocent people off whenever they want and get a pardon. And the answer to fraud here is to cut off benefits to innocent people. Most of these folks are innocent people and kids who just need their services.
Garcia reminded the committee what real, documented fraud actually looks like. Not YouTube accusations, not viral panic, real cases, convicted criminals, hundreds of millions, even billions stolen from Medicare and Medicaid, nursing home executives preying on vulnerable people, lives ruined, families broken apart, public money drained dry. And what happened to those fraudsters under Donald Trump? Did they face consequences? Nope. They got pardoned. Garcia named the names. He referenced the convictions. And when he asked whether that kind of fraud deserved outrage, Republican witnesses suddenly developed a severe case of amnesia. No moral clarity, no urgency, just silence. And that silence said everything. Together, Summer Lee and Robert Garcia delivered a 1-2 punch Republicans couldn't recover from. Lee showed who Republicans choose to target. Garcia showed who they choose to protect. And And once you see that pattern, the entire fraud narrative they're always whining about falls completely apart. Because this was never and has never been about rooting out abuse. It's about scapegoating, protecting pedophiles, and pretending that the rules only apply to poor people. A classic do as I say, not as I do, two-tiered system of justice, the very thing they constantly accuse Joe Biden of running. And while Republicans were busy performing outrage inside of a hearing room, the real-world consequences of this kind of unchecked federal power were playing out on the streets of Minnesota. In Minneapolis, a federal immigration enforcement operation ended with an ICE agent killing a woman. And when the federal government tried to spin what happened, the city didn't buy it. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey told ICE to get the hell out of his city, saying their presence was creating chaos and danger, not safety. That's what Donald Trump's fraud looks like in real life. False narratives, federal overreach, zero accountability, and innocent people paying the price while the same politicians who scream about law and order look the other way. And that's why Congressman Stephen Lynch's assessment is spot on. Because fraud isn't just about stolen money. It's about stolen futures. It's about erasing history, hijacking sacrifice, and abusing symbols that were never yours to claim. John F. Kennedy wasn't a brand or a logo. He wasn't a marketing exercise. He was a war hero, a decorated veteran who risked his life to save his crew, a man who faced down bigotry, stood up to foreign adversaries, and paid the ultimate sacrifice for public service. And he was beloved. And the Kennedy Center wasn't named by accident. It was named by a grateful nation to honor that sacrifice. So when Donald Trump slaps his own name over that legacy, it isn't pride. It isn't patriotism. It's stolen valor. It's historic erasure. It's moral theft. It's power abusing symbols it never earned. It's like his own January the 6th insurrectionists taking down the American flag at the Capitol and replacing it with a Trump rag. And if that's not fraud, then the word has no meaning left. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.